is Emmalou Penrod. And in my last presentation, I talked about what are you saying to yourself? And that was just briefly on self-talk, how we communicate with ourselves, which is really important. That sets the foundation for our attitude, our self-image. Do we view ourselves as capable? Today, I want to talk about how well we are communicating with other people. And there's always a good test for how effective your communications are. And that's when things run smoothly at home and at work. You're able to explain what your needs are, what you want, what you're expecting to have happen. And you're right in tune with other people and what they want to have happen. And you go through life without those hiccups of, I thought you were going to take care of that sort of thing. So I just want to cover a few basic steps or basic points to help any communication at home or at work, and provide examples for both. And the first one is the key point. Most important part of communication is listening. We've made the analogy before that communication is like a game of catch. You don't just throw the ball and turn and leave. Communication has not taken place until the message has been received and understood. So it takes a little going back and forth to make sure that you're understanding each other. And that can only be done when there is effective listening. Quite often when we're talking to someone, especially if it's on a topic where there's some disagreement or misunderstanding, the temptation is very strong to be mentally preparing your response, to be thinking, okay, now I've got to find a way to convince him that he's wrong and I'm right. So what clever thing can I come up that will help support my case? And you're not really listening to understand the other person. True listening requires humility. It requires respect for the other person, respect for the relationship, whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship, and a desire to improve and strengthen that relationship. It's when you're focusing on finding a solution, not on deciding who's right, who's wrong, who wins, who loses. So in effective listening, you are attempting to put yourself in their place, to understand their perspective, their situation. I think we've all heard the analogy of the blind men examining an elephant, and one blind man is led to the elephant's trunk, another one to his side, another one to his tail. And of course, they all have quite different perspectives on what an elephant is and what it looks like and what it feels like. But when you put all the perspectives together, then you get the whole picture of an elephant. Then you really understand. And that's why listening is so important. And it's also so hard. We know the message we want to get out, and we can be very intent on focusing on that and not taking time to hear the other person's perspective. So it begins with effective listening, paying very close attention. Now, a book that I'm reading, I'd like to share just a couple paragraphs from that, because it covers a very important aspect of any communication, whether in your family or at work. And it says, there is one thing that is common to every individual, relationship, team, family, organization, nation, economy, and civilization throughout the world. One thing which, if removed, will destroy the most powerful government, the most successful business, the most thriving economy, the most influential leadership, the greatest friendship, the strongest character, the deepest love. On the other hand, if developed and leveraged, that one thing has the potential to create unparalleled success and prosperity in every dimension of life. Yet it is the least understood, most neglected, and most underestimated possibility of our time. That one thing is trust. And this is from the book, The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey. And he's explaining in this book how much more effective and productive relationships and businesses flourish with trust. And this makes perfect sense. And he sums it up by describing 13 behaviors that promote trust in any relationship or business. And it makes perfect sense to me. Behavior number one is talk straight. It's our communication. It's the way we're communicating with other people. Think of those communications, those relationships you've had in the past, whether with a friend, a family member, a coworker, an employer, an employee. And if trust, think of the ways that trust can be lost. And quite often it is in that verbal communication. He gives some examples. He said, the first thing is tell the truth. Be honest. These are key, obviously. But the third one is let people know where you stand. And he shares an example of a coworker, somebody on his team, who would never really clearly state how he felt. He would never take a clear position on anything until the point had been proved. Either the idea had either been validated or disproved. And then he would join in with the, yeah, I knew that all along.
On a scale of 1 to 5, would you give yourself a 5 on achieving what you want in life? If your answer is anything less than a 5, right now, I have something awesome for you. Achieving your goals and living your life at a 5 isn't easy. Most people aren't prepared to focus, stay disciplined, and do the everyday work that is necessary to achieve amazing results. But since you're watching this, then I'm guessing that you're not one of those people. And this is an opportunity that will change your life. Give2Get is a global program that brings together world-class coaching and combines it with empowering masterminds and networking opportunities. We provide 5-star guidance for the price of a cup of coffee a day. To find out more, click on the link in the description of this coaching session.
And this really frustrated him. They had an important issue. It was going to be discussed with the chairman of the board, the whole team. The next day, he was so unhappy. He went to this coworker's home to discuss it with him in person, to pin him down. Just where do you stand? The author himself was against the initiative. And as he discussed it with his coworker, the coworker in turn said, yeah, I agree. It's not a good initiative. Then in the next meeting, the chairman of the board was for the initiative. and his coworker started to waffle, and he angrily called out, "That is not what you were saying last night when I talked to you." And his coworker kind of hemmed and hawed and said, "Well, yes, that's what I was thinking at that point," but he was a master at just going along with the most influential person in the room and failing to commit himself. Now, have you ever known anyone who did something like that? How much trust did you have for them? How much respect and weight could you give their opinion when you knew they didn't clearly take a stand? So, building trust, moving forward, we want to remember that point right there about letting people know where you stand. And it's more than that. It's use simple language. Quite often in any industry, we get caught up in our acronyms, our jargon. And sometimes when we're working with a potential client or in a family, when you're dealing with younger children, it's easy to slip into that and confuse people and maybe even intimidate with your superior knowledge. But this does not build trust. Use simple language so everyone knows very clearly what you mean and what you're saying. Call things what they are. Demonstrate integrity. And don't manipulate people or distort facts. Have you ever worked with someone who was a salesperson who was trying to manipulate you or distorting facts, or you got the impression they were saying whatever it takes to close the sale? And it doesn't go over. Now, in the United States, this is a big one. Don't spin the truth. And in our politics, we quite often see this spin, just turn it just a little bit to make it look better than it really is. And it is possible to tell the truth, but leave the wrong impression. It's more than just simply being honest. It's making sure that you leave the right impression. I'm going to share a story from my days when I was a high school teacher. Part of my job consisted of helping the students understand where they stood in terms of graduation, what classes they still needed to take to complete all of their graduation requirements. And I was meeting one day with a girl who had really fallen far behind. She had missed a lot of school. She had failed a number of classes. She was beginning to cry and feel badly. I'll never graduate. And I wanted her to see that it was still possible. She could complete some makeup assignments, take classes during the summer. And I wanted her to see that she could graduate. And I was mapping it all out, explaining it. And somehow between my just wanting her to feel better about it or her hearing what she wanted to hear, I'm not sure how much, but she came away with the idea that she didn't have to worry, she would still graduate. When I met with her after the summer and asked, "Did you complete that makeup work?" And she said, "No, but aren't I going to graduate?" So it convinced me that I needed to be more effective at telling the truth and creating the right impression, not leaving anyone with a mistaken impression. So that was a lesson I learned from that. But I highly recommend this book, The Speed of Trust. It helps in any relationship, in business or in family, building that trust. As a parent, letting your children know that you mean what you say. If you have explained the consequence for misbehavior, you are prepared to follow through with it, that you are consistent with what the rules and standards of the home, what they are, and what the expectations are, that they're very clear, and that you are sharing your sincere emotions. This is really a struggle for a lot of parents. They feel like they need to protect their children. If there is a problem in the marriage, they're not at all sure that they should share it. But children are very sensitive. They are very aware when there is tension or contention going on in the home. And if they are not given enough information, they don't need to be given adult information that they're not ready for. But a simple, again, use simple language at their level, explain, Mom and Dad still love you. We have some problems we need to work out, but we both love you. It has nothing to do with you. It's not your fault. There are just some issues we need to work on. This builds trust. It also helps the child feel more secure. Children tend to blame themselves. If anything goes wrong in a family, they feel like, well, if I'd gotten better grades, Mom and Dad wouldn't have split up. Or if I'd, done something better, it wouldn't have happened. But this is, again, where you can really build up that trust in the family. Even explaining, we're still a family. Mom and Dad still love you. We just need to live in separate houses, and we can just arrange it so that it's best for you. Build that trust. Protect that relationship in all of your communications. One other point of a communication are, think about the words you use. Words have power. And some of them can be emotional triggers. I'm going to give you a few examples. Do you refer to yourself as a salesperson or a sales professional? Think about the difference between those two words. When you're with your work team, are you focusing, do you call it a disaster or is it a setback? Again, feel the emotional difference between those two words. A disaster implies there's no recovery from it. We'll never get over this. It'll be horrible. And a setback means a slight delay, but something you can work together and move forward with. If you are in disagreement with someone and you feel like the facts they're presenting are untrue, do you say that's a lie? Or do you say that could be misinformation? The power of the words. One comes across as an accusation. One shuts down communication. If you've just used a powerful word like, that's a lie, it destroys trust. If you can come from perhaps that is inaccurate, that may not be accurate. And also being open to listen, to understand their perspective. Another one is stupid. Do you say that was a stupid decision or a dumb decision? Could you say that may have been ill-advised? Consider the words you use and the impact they will have. And a good way to test this is to think about how the word sounds to you. If someone used that word talking to you, would you feel threatened, insulted, offended? Is there another word that could be used that would do more to promote communication, solving a problem, coming to an understanding? Be very aware of the words you use. We've talked about being aware of personality differences, timing. Is someone too distraught to handle a heavy conversation? Is it better to delay? And we've also talked about how you communicate with more than just your words. We communicate also with our body language. And I want to share a story my son shared with me. My son and his wife have been married for 20 years. So I know my daughter-in-law well, and I love her. She is just a very choice woman. She is so sweet-tempered, patient, loving, caring. I have never heard her chew anyone out or even really express anger. So my son, they want to put solar panels on their house. So my son made an appointment with a salesman from a company to come and talk about the process, the cost, get an estimate, and review the unique particulars of their house. They made an appointment. My daughter-in-law has a 45-mile commute from work. The salesman calls my son the day of the appointment and says, "Can we move that appointment 30 minutes earlier? I need to come a half hour earlier. Is that okay?" My son calls his wife. She says, "Okay, I'll wrap things up at work. I'll head out in time to get the children all arranged, fed, cared for, so they're happy." She puts forth quite a bit of effort to make that change, to meet a half an hour earlier. That new appointed time comes, the salesman doesn't arrive. The original appointed time, a half an hour later, comes. Still no salesman, no phone call, no communication. A half an hour after that, he finally shows up with no apology, no explanation. My daughter-in-law, of course, is not going to chew him out. That isn't her nature. But as my son described it, she could not hide her anger. And I can just imagine her body language, what it was. I'm sure the salesman noticed that. He saw the tension in her muscles, probably the cold glare in her eyes. And he kept making comments like, "Are you okay? Should I come back another time?" He could tell something was wrong. And then finally, my daughter-in-law did explain that it had been an inconvenience for him to have requested meeting an hour and a half, or a half hour earlier, and then coming even later. And then he explained that the previous appointment had taken longer than he expected, but it was too little, too late. He did not get the contract. They're going with another company. But it is interesting to me that my daughter-in-law's body language was so powerful. She didn't have to say a word. He knew she was angry. My experience has been that we use body language to understand where the other person is, where they are emotionally. What are they saying? Sometimes your body language is completely opposite of your words. So checking for congruence between the words and the body language. But I think it is a mistake, and I know this is something my daughter-in-law is working on, being more assertive and saying what she needs or how she feels. I think it's this mistake to rely on body language to communicate our feelings to someone else. I think we'll be much more effective if we use our words and we politely and calmly explain when we've been disappointed, offended, let down. But understanding body language is very important when you're paying attention to the other person. And the big key is right there, paying attention. It is so easy to get caught up in your message and you want to just deliver it just right and put in that punch and really close the sale that you're not even paying attention to what the other person is doing. Are they still maintaining eye contact? Are they starting to look away? Are they moving back? Are they kind of looking around like they're looking for somebody to come rescue them? Are they closed and looking rather angry and defiant? It is important, just as listening is, listen with your eyes as well as your ears and pay attention. What are they doing with their eyes? What is their posture? Are they sitting up straight? Are they slumped over? What are they doing with their hands? Are they in their pockets? Are they out? What about their muscles? Are they looking relaxed? Do you see tension? All of those details will aid in your communication. Pay attention to the body language of the person you are communicating with. And this is another topic you can go to. There are several books written about this that will help you understand body language, what someone is saying with their body. It may not be in agreement with what they're saying with their words. And studies show body language is usually more accurate. My daughter-in-law may not have said that she was angry, but her body language definitely said otherwise. So I hope this helps. Remember listening, trust, make sure everything in your communication is designed to build trust. I totally agree with his assessment that without it, relationships are destroyed. With it, they grow, they flourish, they move forward at a faster, more effective pace. Remember, the words you use, select them wisely, and watch out for that body language. What are they communicating that they didn't say? What's that nonverbal communication? So if you have any questions on that, you can contact me through the Coach's Corner. Happy to help out. And are there any questions now? Okay. All right. Welcome any discussion. Have a great day.